And welcome back to All Abilities No Filter. We're the podcast where we keep it simple, keep it educational, and we're just here to help anybody that takes the time to listen, to provide some great content, whether you are a caretaker, a teacher, a parent, or a self advocate. We're here to help serve everybody. And the way we do that is we bring on amazing guests and specialists to share their experiences and their insights into all sorts of areas. And today is no different. As you kind of heard from our intro, Jeaneen has graciously agreed to be on the show today to share her story and what she's been working on, which I believe can impact so many lives. And we are so excited to have the conversation today. Jeanine, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jake. How are you?
I am doing well. It's the end of the day, so it's always that time to relax a little bit. So it was a great time to schedule this conversation. So if you don't mind, just for our listeners, just kind of give them a little bit of background about yourself, just kind of what you're working on, you've been working on, maybe just your little bit of your life story that's kind of brought you to what you've been working on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Originally, I'm from Hawaii, and I transported myself to Los Angeles in 2005. I graduated in speech therapy in 2001. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time, and I love it. And I love variety. So I keep my schedule pretty open to doing different things. I do early intervention, which is 0 to 3 years old. I've done school age. I used to work in the schools in Hawaii for 4 years and then in Los Angeles for 4 years. So I know the school system very well. And I work with adults in hospitals as well, doing speech therapy. And I had my son in 2012 that created a whole different pathway of like thinking about, speech therapy and how I relate speech therapy to, the kids I work with, the parents I work with, because now I'm a parent, right? And unfortunately, in 2013, my son had an accident where he had a brain injury and a stroke. So not only was I a parent, but I became a parent with a special needs child. So it kind of, even though it's very tragic and, he just turned 13 and he's doing really well, it was something that really changed our life. But it also gave me a superpower as a speech therapist because now I have like this like instant rapport with parents because they don't have like this defensiveness because I'm not judging them that they have a child with special needs or that their child needs help for speech therapy because my child has needed it,
Yeah.
right? So it's helped me along the way, and coming to this point in my life, you know I'm trying to think big picture, like what I want to do, how can I be more impactful in
Sure.
the world,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I think that's kind of that's what led me to where I am now and this next journey of my life.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad he's doing well now. Like I said, that's a hard thing to go through. Absolutely. But so like you said, your main focus is speech therapy. Now, I'll tell you, I work with multiple specialists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, recreational therapists, where with the kids we take care of. And I will openly admit, speech therapy is the one that confuses me the most. It's just, y'all do so much. And it's because it's most of the time when I'm in IEPs and I talk to parents and speech therapy is brought up, their first thing in there is like, well, my kid's not nonverbal. They don't need speech therapy, or they don't have a lisp, or they don't stutter and things like that. Because it's such, y'all do so much and help with and work on so many different skills. And I would love just starting from the basics from a speech therapist, because I do work with a lot of speech therapists, but it's still so, again, y'all just do so much. And we talk about so many different assessments and evals they do. It's amazing and just a lot all the time. So if you could just in your terms kind of describe what a speech therapist does, because it's not just working with nonverbal students or students that stutter or things like that. It's a lot of occupational skills that they can learn and focus on even in IEPs and things like that. So just kind of briefly in your terms, what does a speech therapist really focus on and do?
Yeah, I'll take you through the gamut,
Yeah.
right? So when we're working with really young children, right, we're looking at language
Hmm.
development, receptive language, which is understanding, right? So a lot of kids sometimes they're not able to understand because they're either behind on their cognitive abilities or there's something else going on. Expressively, they're not talking yet, right? So they don't have that expressive language. So when we're working with like little 0 to 3 years old, usually by the time we get them, they're at least 18 months to 2 years old. And so we're working on getting them to express themselves and use words or signs or something to communicate, really basic
Sure.
communication stuff. And then as they get to more school age, that's when we're looking at a lot of articulation
Mhm.
things that people are more familiar with,
Sure.
right? There's also like fluency if they're
Hmm.
stuttering. There's also that receptive and expressive language, understanding and being able to verbalize. And then during school age, all these other things come into play, like problem solving, judgment, social skills, right? So we have a lot of kids who don't know how to socialize or understand how to make a friend, how to keep a friend, what's appropriate social behavior in a group setting. So we work on a lot of that, and as well as like other cognitive things, because some kids need organizational, um, higher executive functioning, problem solving things. So they need to learn how to work on all these cognitive things that we don't really think about as speech therapy, right? But it's all a part of like the brain and how we
Hmm.
think. And even through like high school and early adulthood, a lot of the kids, especially on the spectrum, and my child, even though I said he's doing well, he still has intellectual disability from his brain injury and stroke. He's going to need assistance for a lot of different things. So, like, problem solving's not his strong suit. Um, he knows how to have a conversation with me and other people that he's familiar with, but in a new setting, he might really struggle with that.
Sure.
So as they get older, they're still working on a lot of social skills, problem solving, judgment. um, you know as they get older, how do you interview for a job, right? So it's a lot of role playing and learning how to answer questions and take the perspective of who you're talking with, because sometimes they're only in their own head and they're not able to take that presuppositional ability and think about the world from someone else's point of view.
Yeah.
And as you get older, I say I work with adults. When we get older, they have other things like swallowing disorders, which you don't really think about. And then also people can have a traumatic brain injury at any point in their life, right? So that's going to affect their cognitive ability. And then as you get older, you're thinking about strokes, right? So you're thinking about strokes that impact the brain. And if it impacts the language side on the left side of the brain, then they're going to have a hard time with understanding, expression, problem solving. If they've had a brain injury and they hit the frontal lobe, that's all executive functioning.
Right.
It's all like impulsivity, judgment, all that stuff. So when I say break it down in the whole gamut of things, every little aspect is what we consider in the realm of speech therapy.
Sure.
Not every speech therapist is is versed in every aspect. So a lot of them specialize, right? So a lot of people would just work with kids or just work with adults. But in school, you learn pretty much everything, and you kind of fine tune what you want to focus on
I
as a
think, yeah,
clinician.
I think it's amazing because it's just so vast because I mean, just for an example, I was in an IEP meeting not probably 2 weeks ago. And one of the, I'm sure you've been in IEP meetings, you get stuck on one thing and it just takes up your entire time. And one of the things that mom was talking about was she was advocating so hard to get speech therapy inserted into the IEP. And you could tell she had done her research. I mean, she was on her game. This mom, she is a warrior, can be sometime a helicopter mom, but she knows her son so well. And she was explaining why speech therapy is needed. And she hit on so many things like you were talking about building social skills. Her son doesn't know how to speak in a normal situation to where sometimes the language he uses can be inappropriate. It can be just not fit for that situation, and he was already 17 years old. So he was I mean, he was getting up there. And you could tell when we had the principal in there and everybody was in there, and they were so fixated on the physical aspects of speech. Just, well, he's super fluent when he speaks. He's able to communicate what he needs and doesn't need and things like that. And so it was such a battle because they just weren't understanding exactly what you said. Speech therapy can handle such a broad services. And have you ever, I know you've been in IEPs, have you ever experienced that yourself where services are wanted by the parent or you believe they need to be added into an IEP and you're kind of hitting that roadblock of them not fully understanding exactly how those services can benefit a student in an IEP, or just any challenges you've ever seen in an IEP? I know our listeners, almost 50% of what they want to hear about is the IEP because it is such a huge part of our lives. Have you ever seen those struggles, or do you have any advice for parents that want to get those types of services for their child's IEP?
Absolutely. So, even though I'm a speech therapist, right? I do speech therapy with my son every day, whether he realizes it or not. He never realizes it, right?
Yeah,
It just happens. But I make sure that he gets speech therapy at school
sure.
as well, because I want to make sure someone else is working with him, because it's different when I'm a parent and he's working with a
Hmm.
therapist. Um, I've been in meetings, I'm a speech therapist where I can see the long-term goals that parents have for children. So I don't often say no, the child doesn't need speech therapy unless they're actually really good. They've tested really well, they're actually super functional, they actually don't need it, right? So that's when I'm saying they don't need it, they've graduated, and usually parents also are in agreement and they're understanding.
Sure.
So I've never had a meeting where I denied a parent speech
Hmm.
therapy. I've been in a meeting where my son was denied like physical therapy
Sure.
because he was, 7 years old, and they're like, well, he's functional,
Yeah.
he can walk, he can do all this stuff, and I'm like, but he's falling, because he
Hmm.
has a right-sided weakness. I'm like, he's still falling, he's tripping over things, and it was a struggle. We had to bring in an advocate. So I always say, if you can have an advocate in your corner, absolutely bring them. An advocate lawyer will know the law to the T and will be able to stand up for
Hmm.
you. So, as a parent, I brought in an advocate when I thought, I couldn't just do it myself, because even though I know IEPs really well and I can defend my son, it's always great to have somebody in your corner who can cite different areas of the law and give an example of why the child needs it. So I
Yeah.
would say ask for help.
Yeah, that's always number one advice there is to get someone that is knowledgeable in those. And what we ended up doing was bringing in a speech therapist to give their opinion. And you can tell once that expert comes in, I don't know why, it just clicks then because, I mean, the biggest expert on that kid is the mom. But just bringing that expert, it kind of clicks with them there. It was a tough one, but
Yeah,
we got him.
I was going to ask you if you brought in a speech, or if there was a speech therapist in the room, because once the mom starts talking, then they can definitely pinpoint different goals
Sure.
that they can work on. And then everybody is like, okay, well, okay, if the speech therapist says so, then
Yeah.
it's fine,
Yeah, there
you
we
know?
got that word on it, so it's fine. But yeah, just the any services a parent's trying to fight for in an IEP can be always just such a struggle a lot of the time. And one thing that I was super excited to talk to you about was, so in our environment that I currently work at a residential facility for students or kids, adolescents, teenagers, whatever you want to call them. They range from completely nonverbal to well above grade level. And always the thing, when we bring in new staff to take care of our kids and be direct care stuff, but some of the more difficult things we deal with when we're training new staff is working with nonverbal kids, because when they hear nonverbal, I can tell they automatically think these kids can't talk. They have no idea what I'm saying, and it's going completely over their head. And we try to get through to them, is just because they're nonverbal doesn't mean they don't understand what you're trying to get out of them. And if you're not accommodating to their level and you just look frustrated and irritated because they're not giving you what you want, it just sets them off. Because if you're trying to communicate to someone and they're looking at you like they're upset with you and you have no reason why, it can get them going. And I would love to get your take on that, where we're taking people that have no experience working with autism or any disability, and now they are caretaking for students that could be anywhere from 13 to 19 years old that are nonverbal. So, what kind of advice would you give to people that are going into that situation? Because I've had paraprofessionals in my classrooms that are like that, where it's they aren't used to working with students like that, and you can tell frustrations coming on both ends, and there's no accommodation there, which makes the relationship kind of crumble, and the patience goes away, and things like that. So, what kind of advice would you give to individuals that are going into working with nonverbal kids with no experience?
Yeah. First, I would tell the adults, right?
Yeah.
They are an adult and they are able to take the point of view. So take the perspective. If you were the child, if your words were taken away, but everything else was okay, you understood everything. You can hear things fine. You can see things fine, right? You can point at things, possibly, whatever it is. But just your words are gone, right? So how would you want to communicate, or how could you communicate? And have them think about that's what the child is doing, right? They can see, they can, a lot of kids that are nonverbal can understand,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And communication through even the simplest augmentative things like pictures
Hmm.
are really helpful. Picture schedules. Some kids have, talking tablets and things like that, right? So, like teaching them what the words of that child are, like how the child can access communication is it was super super important. So having the adult take this perspective of taking, being in that child's shoes and understand that, you don't necessarily, you're not necessarily walking through the world with no clue on what's going on, because you can experience it, you can understand it, you just can't express or advocate for yourself.
Right.
So finding ways to communicate through pictures, through a tablet, through signs if necessary, whatever that is. And I think that's good for people. Like they understand it a little bit better when they take the perspective of the child,
Yep.
rather than I'm this adult, I'm going to be taking care of this kid who doesn't talk, and I guess I have to do everything for them because they don't know how to do
Yeah.
anything, right? Which isn't true, right? A
Hmm.
lot of times a child who is nonverbal, we've all seen it, knows and understands. They can gesture, they may make facial expressions, they may do something. They just can't use their
Right.
words, the actual words.
Yeah, and we tell our new staff it's like you're not going to understand it right off the bat. You're not going to be a miracle worker right off the bat. You're not going to understand cues and things that these kids are doing, but it takes time and it can be frustrating a lot of time. We had one of our speech therapists actually went in to one of our trainings and did this, and she told the whole new orientation class that we had, she's like, "All right, I want everybody to grab their tongue, and I want you to hold your tongue as tight as you can without hurting yourself." So they did it, and I'm sitting there watching this, cracking up, because then she starts asking them all questions, and there's like, but don't let go of your tongue, so she can't understand what they're saying, and she's keeps asking them what their names are. She'll ask what their favorite food is, things like that, and they couldn't do it. And then it's just like you said, she whips out this amazing picture book and communication book she has. She goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. Can you point to what you enjoy doing?" And they did it. And it was so wild because you could tell it just clicked for them, because it's kind of like what you said. They put themselves in the shoes of the kids that they're working with. Because she asked him, it's like, "Did anybody get really frustrated with me?" And they all raised their hand, of course, because they were all irritated what she was trying to get them to do. But it is amazing when the caretaker is able to put themselves in the shoes of who they're taking care of, because they could, like I say, I mean, you would like, I tell the people that we have working with us, it's like if you wouldn't want someone to have the least expectation of you just because of one thing. They're all of our kids that we work with are fully capable of the max they're capable of. We just have to give them the accommodations that it takes for them to get there. So I agree completely. If you don't empathize with somebody, it's very hard to relate. And if you can't relate, can't support or can't take care of them. Another thing that I've super excited to talk about is your book and the programs that you've implemented with Play Dumb and Sabotage. So I've had the awesome opportunity to kind of research that, and it's so cool. Could you kind of give us just a um, overview of what it is and kind of what it all entails and the benefits of it, and just kind of everything you've done really awesome job with?
Thank you so much. So it's Play Dumb and Sabotage. So the subtitle is Mindfully Underestimating. Sorry, let me start over. Mindfully under anticipating the child's needs and creating opportunities to practice language. And it's really a conversational handbook that I wanted to create for anybody who is working with children, who has children, right? Like I said, I want to create a greater impact on the world, and I can't duplicate myself to help everybody, but I can write a book and that can be in the hands of anybody who can read it. I have an audiobook as well. Um, and I'm going to be having an online course to go along with the book very shortly,
Fantastic.
which would be great. So it's a handbook and it walks parents through really easy strategies that they can utilize with their children to encourage language development and practice through everyday functional tasks, right? And so there's a little activity at the end of every chapter to make it interactive, because when you're reading a book, you're like, how do I implement this? At the back of each chapter, it shows you, it asks you questions, it gives you homework to do, and then you can practice that along with your kids. And one of the biggest things I tell parents is don't ask a yes no question unless you're ready to honor the no.
Yeah.
And no one ever thinks about that, right?
Mhm.
But we always tell kids, can you pick that up? Can you put this away? Are you ready to do your homework? Are you ready to go to bed? Are you ready to work? Right? So we're asking them all these yes no questions. And if the child says no or just doesn't say anything, then we say, okay, you're going to do it anyway. Right? So we get stuck in this pattern of having the child do something even though they didn't really want to, or they've already told you that they didn't want to do it, right? But if you give them choices, I could say, we have two activities. I have a book and a puzzle. Which one first? And they might look at one of them. Okay, great. Or they might pick one of them, right? And even when my son was little, I would say, let's get dressed. Do you want the blue shirt or the green shirt? And would hold things about shoulder width apart, because if they're too close, then you don't know what they're looking at, right? So if you hold about shoulder width apart, even if they're just looking and they have no words yet, then you can model that. Like, oh, I want the blue shirt. I love blue. It's my favorite color, Or like my son, even to this day, I'm like, okay, your nails are getting really long. We need to cut them. Do you want to cut them tonight or tomorrow? Right?
Yeah.
So he makes a choice, and then it's a decision that he's made rather than like, oh, your nails are long. Do you want to cut them tonight? He goes, no. Do you want to cut them tomorrow?
No.
No. But if I give him a choice, it works out a lot better.
That's just
Yeah.
so interesting because it is the power of option or the power of just power. Because we work with our kids, we work with, I mean, the staff and the specialists, they're in control of their lives. Like I tell people, they can't go to the restroom without someone unlocking a door. And I think what you're saying is so relevant because I never even thought about how you termed it with just taking away the no in it. And that's so interesting because we run into so many situations like with the kids we work with, it's they never want to do anything until they feel like it's their choice or they feel like they have some type of control over it. I'll never forget when I first kind of got into this field, a guy that I always mention, Dr. William Killian, who I had the privilege of working with for a lot of years. He told a story of he was working with one of the first kids we had, and he never wanted to take a shower, never wanted to take a bath, and this kid went. It was rough on everybody. He went quite a long time without any hygiene. But finally, Dr. Killian um, just looked at the staff, looked at people worked on it. It's like, well, what does he love? What does he just super enjoy doing? And superheroes, that was his jam. And he had these action figures, and Killian finally went to go work with him. And he said, okay, do you want to take a shower with Batman or the Flash? He grabs the Flash and goes right into the shower to take a shower. And I mean, that was one of my just first shocked moments because I was like, how can something that simple of just kind of, you're not you're almost taking the choice away by giving more options. And it's just wild to see that, because it was just a clicking moment of something so simple helping with such a problem that's been lasting us weeks. And we just kind of switched it up on the kid all the time. Okay, you don't want to do your homework right now. Okay, do you want to use the Batman pencil or the Superman pencil? It worked most of the time. Sometimes he just flat out didn't want to do it, and that's no one's fault. But it is very interesting how the mindset changes when they feel like they don't have any power, or they're wanting to do something they hate to do, and you just keep asking them to do something they don't like. So why is the answer ever going to change? So that's super interesting how you put it, where you're like taking away the no. Something I'm definitely going to be implementing with some of my more sensitive cases I'm working with right now. But just giving the kids a little bit of power back, a little bit, especially our teenagers that we work with. Because, when you're a teenager, you just want to be in control of everything all the time. And then when you're working, something that we always talk about a lot of time, and you've talked about a little bit, is the early intervention portion of it. My mom actually owns a preschool where they've just started working with um, very young kids that they believe are on the spectrum, could be on the spectrum, and they're having early interventionists come in and out of her facility and things like that. And it's a whole learning experience for her. And they try to work with the parents too. What advice would you give to parents that they're in that early intervention stage, to where some parents just feel like the progress can only be made when the speech therapist is there because they're the specialist, but parents have all the capabilities of implementing things at home? What's probably the most important thing you would think to teach parents, train parents, or just tell parents what to do in order just to support what the speech therapist is doing, or to better support their kids at home to where they're just building progress even when the specialist isn't there?
Absolutely. So, the specialist or the speech therapist, we are the teacher,
Mhm.
right? But the child is with the parents most of the time. They go home with the parents, they wake up with the parents, they spend the weekends with the parents. So actually, the parents are the ones who actually help to carry over what we are teaching. So it's very important for the parents to be like all in and be very open to learning different strategies, like the don't ask a yes no question,
Yeah.
right? And offering choices. Um, the book is called Play Dumb and Sabotage because parents, especially first time parents, we over anticipate what the child might need, right? Because we want to be really good
Yeah.
parents. So oftentimes we're getting a lot of kids in early intervention that seem to understand everything. They seem to be able to run around and jump and climb, but they just aren't talking quite yet, right? And so a lot of those kids, once they start speech therapy, they do start talking right away, a lot of them, because now we're using strategies where we're mindfully under anticipating, right? We're not giving them everything they want. So, a simple task for parents to do at home, the carryover for that play dumb and sabotage, is when you're giving snacks, don't give the whole bowl of goldfish. Just give a few pieces and have the bowl with all the goldfish in sight but out of reach, where they can practice asking for more or signing for more, or if they need to use a tablet, that's fine. Whatever it is, the child will progress to asking eventually, hopefully, I want goldfish, please. And then you can be like, oh, how many goldfish do you want? Do you want two goldfish or three goldfish? And so you can add in different aspects and expand that. So that's a simple way that parents can carry over things. And also reading a book, right? Every day. We always read a book. Even to this day, my son wants to read a story every night. And it really helps vocabulary, it helps the understanding. And then the child can, you can say, oh, tell me the story tonight, so they can start to verbalize and talk about it rather than the parent just do that. But hearing the words every day, different words and different stories and intonations, is really important for the child to hear. And don't be afraid to be super animated and silly, and do things to music. I love to pair language with music because it pulls from both sides of the brain, the left side of the brain for language, the right side for the music. And when they come together, we remember things so much better. Like nursery rhymes, we will never forget the nursery rhymes we grew up with, right? But we will forget maybe the paper that we wrote in college or whatever, our dissertation, whatever it was. Um, we'll never forget our favorite songs from high school.
Yep.
We'll continually remember those songs. And for nursery rhymes, you can layer on whatever words you want onto any nursery rhyme melody, and it'll help the child remember it better. It'll help them understand that there's different parts to words, right? There are syllables to words, and there are words within a
Yeah.
sentence. So breaking that up and slowing down your speech is really important, because sometimes parents just talk really quickly at their child, and the child, it's like learning a foreign language. They hear this stream of words, but they don't know where it's broken up.
Sure.
So just speaking a little bit slower,
Hmm.
having that emphasis on different words is really important. And these are all things that are in the
Yeah.
book. So like, read the book, do the exercises, carry it through at home. Because these are things that, parents will take their kids to, like, a speech clinic,
Hmm.
right? Or they might get speech at school or something. And the child will go in for speech, and the child will come out from speech, and then the parents are really clueless about what happened in speech and how they can carry it through. And the big goal of the book for me is to decrease the number of children that need speech therapy, and also pull back that veil of, like, what speech therapy is about, because it's not super difficult. These are simple things that people just don't really think about. But once you learn them and once you put that into practice, it becomes a habit, and you just will do it without having to think about it so much. Like, not
Yeah.
asking the yes no question is
Hmm.
super hard,
Yeah.
right? Is super hard. But I've been doing it pretty much my whole career. So it's not that hard for me because I do it all the time. But
Hmm.
when I teach parents and teachers, don't ask a yes no question unless you're ready to honor the no. It takes them a really long time. And it's understandable
Yeah.
because it's like something that's so like second nature is to ask a yes no question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know. It's now because now that you've put it in such great terms, I'm going to try my best not to. And I can already tell I'm going to screw up so much with it. But it's the journey, not the destination. And something else I think what you said is so cool is it's almost like when you're wanting to teach this stuff to your students or or your kids, it's like what you're trying to get them to be able to do is try your best to put the kids in that situation without them even knowing it. It's kind of like you said, having the goldfish there, just hoping they ask for more or telling you how many they want, where you're not really structuring it like a lesson or an activity. It's what we're doing in life right now, but you're hoping they just kind of naturally perform the tasks that what you're kind of wanting them to do. And I think that's just so cool that people don't really think about is just kind of forming your everyday life around the goals that you want your kids or your patients or students to hit. That way they don't feel, I feel like when you structure it like, all right, we're going to sit down and work towards this goal, it puts a lot of pressure on the kids. But if they just feel like it's their everyday life and you're just kind of secretly putting in these activities that you hope they hit. And if they don't, they don't. But if they do, it's super exciting. But when we form everything like a structured task or assessment or lesson in that environment, kids feel a lot of pressure and they want to get it right. But when you alleviate that by taking away that type of environment, it leads to so much more success, kind of like what you're doing. I think that's why your book is so cool because it gives kind of that instructional purpose to parents where they can read through the chapters and look at the activities to do, but then they can kind of implement it in a way that it doesn't feel so structured and pressure oriented because they're wanting their kids to hit a certain goal. It's what they can just do in their everyday lives, which I think is awesome. And like you said, the animation and fully into it, I think is really great too. I had a paraprofessional in my last class where I was in a public school, and I don't know how she had that much energy, but it was when we were working on lessons, you would think she was in a Broadway show, and these kids would get so going because she would get going, and all the retention these kids had came from things she was working on with them. And it was just amazing because she's just so invested in it with that goofiness, and the kids felt okay to be goofy because she was looking goofy. And it was just really awesome that where you are, just that investment and animation that you put into what you're working with goes a really long way. Um, a question that I had that I've asked other people, and I wouldn't call it a silly question. So there's so many programs out and you have children, so you probably know. I don't have children myself. I have a lot of nieces and nephews that I get to spend a lot of time with, and all when I'm around them, I hear about Peppa Pig, I hear about Miss Rachel, I hear about all these YouTube shows they do. And when you watch them, they do seem educational. They do kind of talk about what's your just a random thought. What is like kind of your view on that? Because I will see, and I have worked with kids with families where they almost rely on that stuff a lot to not really educate their kids, but be a supplemental factor a little bit on learning their ABCs and things like that. But when I'll talk to my nieces and nephews and things like that, I'm like, oh, where did you learn this? Peppa Pig taught me, or Miss Rachel. I have my own views on that, but again, I don't have kids, so I kind of see it from an outside looking in a little bit. But what do you have any opinions on that where kids watch it so much it almost takes the place of an educator, or even not the place of a parent, but supplemental of that kind of stuff? I know it's sometimes a touchy subject for parents, but what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think screen time, as they would group everything
Hmm.
into, right? Screen time programs is a really interesting area to talk about because a lot of times, you know, parents will put screen time on so they can go and cook dinner, or they use it more like a babysitter rather than like, this is your teaching
Hmm.
time and you're going to learn something. I would say out of the ones that you mentioned, my son loved Peppa Pig
Hmm.
growing up, and there are a lot of great lessons in Peppa Pig.
Yeah.
Um, like Coco Melon, they said, is not really that educational.
Hmm.
It's very
Yeah.
stimulating for the kids. So the kids want to watch it because lots of very colorful. Miss Rachel, I've seen a little bit of, and I believe her son needed speech
Hmm.
therapy, and so she kind of is mimicking speech therapy. I think what I've seen of her is also very good, but in terms of like watching an abundance of these programs, I don't think it's not going to be a substitute for education or parent interaction.
Yeah.
I always say that if you are watching or your kid is watching a program, to watch it with them if possible,
Hmm.
so you can talk about what Peppa Pig did with her brother George and what Miss Rachel is doing with those farm animals, and practice the sounds that she's making and the words that she's saying. So I would say, as much as possible, if you could have that screen time be the parent and child and the program rather than just the program and the child, because then the child just becomes this audience and just is not really interacting per se. They're just absorbing. And I think a lot of screen time by itself is not very helpful for children. But the interaction, that if this child is sitting with their parent and the parent is asking them questions or commenting about the show, then that opens up the child to also maybe ask questions or comment or be experimental with different words or sounds or whatever activities that the program is showing. But yeah, don't use the program as a babysitter unless you need that, 15 minutes to finish prepping dinner or whatever it is, and try to be there with the child.
Yeah. Yeah, I have my own take on Peppa Pig because when I go to see my niece and I'm so excited to see her and hang out with her, I show up and she's on the couch watching her Peppa Pig and doesn't want anything to do with me, just won't acknowledge me. She's got Peppa Pig on for a bit. She's got to finish her stuff. So, yeah, Peppa Pig, I got a little view on just because she takes away my time with my niece sometimes, but it's okay. She's super smart and learns from it and everything. But yeah, I completely agree. I think there are a ton of benefits from it, and but sometimes I'd get worried. Sometimes it'll take away the social aspects of things because they're watching a screen instead of interacting with people around them. But it is amazing because she'll come and talk to me and spewed off her ABCs and says them perfectly. And I got to give Peppa and Miss Rachel credit. They're good teachers sometimes, and they do a great. But everything's great in moderation, and I think that is another example of what can do. And one thing you talked about earlier that I wanted to hit on is that you said you were going to start offering or offering workshops on your book and everything. What does that entail? Because I'm a huge workshop guy. I love being able to get my hands dirty or learning from those that create the programs or just more educating myself. So, what are those workshops all about?
Yeah, so right now I'm building an online program. It's going to be for three different skill levels, right? So level one's going to be parents and caregivers. Level two is going to be educators and other paraprofessionals who work with children. And then the third level will be speech therapists and speech therapy assistants. And the basic level would be kind of mimicking what the book is, but kind of having more interaction. Maybe doing like group coaching calls, or booking a 30-minute consultation or question and answer. And they'll have like a 5-week course, so they can kind of go through one course, absorb it, practice it, and then come back for week two, and then have everything culminate at the very end, and hopefully have a better grasp of how to work with children, and with their own children, for parents and caregivers. And for the educators, going a little bit more in depth, because you guys have to work in different environments, whether it's in the schools or like a residential area, a residential setting, or someplace else in the community. You guys might be doing things a little bit differently, and having to have additional strategies to utilize in those different environments. And for speech therapists, like, we're learning how to um, go more in depth on activities you're doing in the therapy sessions, because I've supervised SLP assistants, right? Speech language therapy assistants, and they're great at play and they can do the therapy, but once the child gets stuck, like, there's like, what else can they do with the same activity to grow the language, or to work on multiple goals with one activity? So that comes with experience, right? To learn how to take that activity of offering the goldfish for snack to, oh, which do you want, two or three goldfish? Oh, do you want the red goldfish or the green goldfish if you're doing multicolors? So expanding on activities to make them more functional for the child's goals, and have it be more fun, and layer on different, you know, difficulty levels within one session.
That's awesome. This is why I love having people like yourself on here because I'm literally sitting here taking notes while you're talking, just taking it because it's like every time you give something, I'm like, oh, that's something I want to tell my teachers, and we're going to give that a shot and give try that in there because it is just it's so simple yet you're just like, yeah, that'll work. It's wild. It's so cool. And I know your workshops are just going to help so many people, just like your book has, because it's like it's so simple that I don't need to be a speech therapist or a teacher, or have all this education to understand the benefits of it or the instructions of it. And I think that's so awesome because it's kind of like what our purpose here is on the show. We don't want to use all the technical jargon that 1% of the population is going to understand. We won't put our conversations and our resources in layman's terms, yes, but just in a way that, one, sounds fun to people, but two, it's jargon, it's language that they understand. It's language that they can understand why it's beneficial, why it can help their patient, their student, their child. And I think your resources do that in spades, and it's really awesome. Um, and so great. Well, and where can they find all this information that you've been able to speak about? Where can our listeners go and find your book, your workshops, and all these amazing resources?
Amazing. So they could go to my website. It's playdumbandsabotage.com. And from there, there's links to the Amazon, where they can buy the book on Amazon there. There's links to my social media. There's other podcasts that I've been on as well. So I'll put this on my website as well. And any online courses that I'm having will be posted on there. They can also be added to my email list, so they can keep in contact and ask any questions that they might have.
Fantastic. And listeners, everything we've discussed today will be in the description of the podcast. It'll be on our website, all of our socials as well. We're going to make everything we've talked about as easy as possible to find, because you got to find it. It's awesome and it's amazing. And Jeaneen, thank you so much for being on today. You have given so many cool things that I'm going to go implement with our kids, and I know our listeners are going to love. And I can't wait to go talk to our speech therapist, because now I have such a better understanding of it. So it is just, it's so cool. And thank you so much. And it's just been so amazing talking to you, picking your brain and learning so much. So thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And listeners, like I said, go to our website. Don't forget to like and follow the podcast. Our website has all this amazing information, all of our episodes as well. Please, listeners, don't forget to leave questions, leave comments. That's how we build our episodes, as by learning what you want to know about, because nothing's more important than what you need to know. But we thank you again for getting with us today, and we can't wait to get around the table again for our next unfiltered conversation. Thanks, guys.